The future is here. You have arrived. And today's show on Boritzer's Bio Briefings is all about the baby boomers. Except there's nothing to look forward to the future. The future is here for us. Right, Jay? The future is here, right?
Because I know you're a baby boomer just like I am.
But knowing that you are an incorrigible entrepreneur, I know that you're always hopeful for the next business. And today we're going to be talking about the business for baby boomer.
You mean the BBB discussion?
The BBB discussion. We're going to be talking about what's going to change in our lives and what opportunities there are for anybody who's interested, what good stuff the baby boomers brought around.
You should live so long.
Yes. We're not going to get any thank you. I just want to remind our watchers right here on ThinkTech Hawaii, where we have our weekly Boritzer's Bio Briefings, everything from healthcare to science to biotechnology to pharmaceuticals to aging to medicine to Obamacare, whatever you want to. If you have suggestions, please send them to me. You can reach me at Dr. Rafi at Bioinformedical or at ThinkTechHawaii.com. You can reach me with a bird, you can reach me with a plane, you can reach me just by plain email at Boritzer at Bioinformedical.com. And if you want to, you can even reach me on LinkedIn. If you want to be my friend, I don't have many friends. My wife says it's because I better not tell you. But in any case,
I want to be your friend, Dr. Rafi.
Okay, thank you so much. I need all the friends I can get. So remember what we say on this show? You're hot, we're not. We just bring you the hot news, wherever it may be, wherever it's roasting, toasting, or warming up. So what we're going to talk about, first let me regale you a little bit about our subject about the baby boomers and why I have a personal interest, aside from having reached the exalted stage of being a actually post-baby boomer by a couple of years. So I'm a little cheating on this, but don't let it ruin the effect. The reason I'm so interested is back in the 60s, when I went to New York University in the Bronx. There was a campus that hosted a place called the Hall of Fame for Great Americans with busts of all the good people from George Washington on up. Unfortunately, it's now no longer part of New York University. They sold it to Bronx Community College. But in any case, I went to school there, and at the time my parents decided that they were going to complete the American dream after our immigration to the United States, and they were going to get into a business. They were tired of working 2 shifts, 6 days a week, and trying to survive. Yes, survival was even an issue back in the 60s, as it is even more so today. And my mother, who had been a cook at a big chronic disease hospital in the Bronx, had met several people, and they decided that they were going to buy a small nursing home. And the small nursing home was 52 beds. It was converted private homes in the Bronx near a place called Kingsbridge Heights, near the reservoir in the Bronx. And my mother and her partners, it was actually a very interesting polyglot group of immigrants. One was well, there was one American actually. The American was a Jewish pharmacist. And he had serviced also the hospital where my mother was the chief dietitian and cook and bottle washer. The other person was a contractor, and he was a Sicilian immigrant. Why do contracting and Sicilians go together? I don't know, but just like olive oil.
Contracting.
Well, he built homes and houses and things like that. And the third person was, I believe, Polish, a Polish pharmacist. So here you got these group of 3 immigrants and an American pharmacist, and they decided to go into the business. They were all somehow involved in this.
All these people went to the...
Well, yeah, they were all involved. Yeah, there were 56 beds and 4 people are partners. You can imagine what a polyglot group this was. But they had all met at the Hebrew Home and Hospital for the Chronically Ill in the Bronx. They were all servicing one way or another. I guess in those days, and maybe even today, it's recognized that immigrants were less expensive labor than the local providers.
Always the case.
Yeah. The doctor wasn't completely licensed. The only person who was really fully licensed was the pharmacist. And of course, they couldn't get around that. So but everybody was afraid that you could buy aspirin over the counter in those days. But in any case, so my parents came into the nursing home business. I went off to Hawaii to go to graduate school to study sociology. And when I came back, my parents said, "Could you help us? Because we have all these new rules. There were new laws called Medicare and Medicaid, and you had to conform to them."
What year was this?
This was in the 1966. And they said, so I was the interpreter for everybody to kind of figure out what was needed. The main authorities that governed health facilities, nursing homes, hospitals, and the like, was the state health department. But lo and behold, after they got all this working, my mother worked realistically about 18 hours a day as the general manager. The other ones all had their own jobs to do, and so they came and they were the owners. And then lo and behold, again, I'm leading you into this because the history of my involvement in long-term care is actually also the history of some of the laws that are in existence today. And one of the laws that was passed was Title 1819 of the New York State Code, the Health Code, and the other laws that were passed were the Medicare and Medicaid laws. And so that suddenly changed the whole picture, because instead of the state health department being the ultimate authority, they were actually just the police officers. They did not contribute to the business of long-term health care, and that was left to the federal government. The federal government, by virtue of giving them money. And the money we're talking about, one was the Medicaid law, which actually financed nursing home care for the indigent. Now you say, why would a law like this pass back in the 60s? Well, big social changes in America. The social changes were...
Lyndon B. Johnson, for example.
Even before Lyndon B. Johnson, there were social changes. As a sociologist, I must mention these changes because they were actually critical to the laws being passed, especially the Medicaid law. It used to be called welfare. So welfare was for the indigent, the immigrants who couldn't get a job perhaps, or people who were disabled, handicapped. A lot of the social, net that was in existence, let's say, after the 60s, didn't exist previously, except for Social Security and so on. But welfare was a city responsibility. Every city had a welfare department for the indigent. And for those who couldn't pay for their own medical care, they set up city hospitals. But eventually, this became too much of a responsibility. They became too big in numbers. But the real crux of the issue were two sociological facts. People started living longer. So no longer would they die off at the age of 50 or 60. They were living to 65. But they were no longer perhaps working. Perhaps they were retired. They had ailments. They didn't plan on it. There was no extra wealth. That was one issue. The other issue, sociological issue, was the return of the veterans from World War II. They went to college in the late 40s, early 50s. They built places like Levittown for their families, single-family homes. And guess what happens when you start, everybody wants to have a home. People assume that everybody always had a home in America. No, rentals were very popular. That's why we had laws like rent controls.
New York City, everybody rents in New York City.
But suddenly everybody wanted to move to the suburbs, away from the crime and the dirt and the lack of city services. They were going to build a wonderful house away and get away from all the problems. It didn't exactly work out that way, because now what happened was that the wife had to go also get a job. So which brought in more social movements, the feminist movements, and perhaps more relaxed social attitudes, and also mixing of groups between the suburbs and the city itself. So all these social changes, who suffered? It's always the old people. So who suffered?
What did the Vietnam War have to do with that?
The Vietnam War actually had very little to do with the old people, but World War II is when the veterans came back. I'm talking about the veterans from World War II.
Of course, but I'm talking about the 60s. I see the 60s as defined by the Vietnam War.
Right, but they were actually reaping the changes that had happened basically in the late 50s, the building of the Levittowns, the suburbs.
Yeah,
that's what
that was
propelled.
out of the late 50s.
And suddenly, mom and dad, who you left behind to go to the suburbs, they're living in the inner city. But guess what happened to mom and dad? They got older.
Yeah.
And they needed care. Now, where was the Junior, and where was Missy and Carol and Jenny and Susan? They were taking care of their husbands and the kids in the suburbs.
Yeah.
Even that idyllic little picture soon changed, because the mortgages required payment. And if you wanted to get a new car, everybody promised you a Chevrolet apple pie and a home in the suburbs. How are you going to pay for it? Mortgages, low interest rates, mortgages, but someone has to pay the mortgages. The salary doesn't actually cover it. So all that brought the social changes, the American dream, that was the beginning of the hell. That was the beginning of the problems that people didn't understand they were creating. We never understand when we live through a period that we're creating certain, inheritances for our next of kin, our children, grandchildren, and so on. So what happened was the older people, the aged, suddenly you need to take care of them in institutions where before they'd be taken care of at home. They were living longer, so they had different types of diseases. They no longer had a sudden heart attack or had bad arthritis that they couldn't walk, or they fell and broke their hip, and that was the end. That was the demise. Medical things happen, changes happen, diagnostics change. Now there's also money to pay for it from the Medicaid program to support. So somehow you keep this thing going. The next thing that happened in the law was Medicare. Suddenly, for those people who are lucky enough to live past 65, there's also coverage for disasters and so on. This is what created in the 60s the federal laws of Medicare and Medicaid and propelled the old age industry. This prepared the grounds for the baby boomers. Those who were born during the 60s, they are today the baby boomers who are suddenly looking back and say, how did all this happen? What's going on? And it's always the instinct in society or groups to blame it on someone else. It's always somebody else's fault. It's never us. It's never our desires and so on. Just as an aside, even if you remember the gas crisis in the early 80s, suddenly it's no one else's fault. Well, if you're driving a car that gets 8 miles per gallon, yes, it is your fault. So the demand but going back to the nursing home, so my parents suddenly had a property that was licensed to be a long-term care facility called a nursing home. I'll get back to the story and you'll see exactly what happened. It changed their life and changed my life as well. We'll be right back. You're watching Boritzer's Bio Briefings right here on ThinkTech Hawaii. My guest is Jay Fidell.
And I'm having a nice afternoon with Rafi Boritzer.
And we'll be back in 1 minute.
I'm Hong Jiang, host for Asia in Review on Tuesdays.
And I'm David Day, host for Asian Review on Thursdays. Both of us broadcast our respective shows at 4 p.m.
And my topics tend to deal with questions related to environment, culture, history, and sometimes human rights.
And my shows tend to be on international business, foreign policy, geopolitics, and national security. And you can watch our shows live on the ThinkTech website at thinktechhawaii.com.
And you can also watch us on YouTube or Olalo.
So come join us on Thursdays at 4 p.m. I'm David Day.
And on Tuesdays at 4 p.m., I'm Hong Jiang.
Aloha.
You're watching Boritzer Bio Briefing right here on ThinkTech Hawaii with my special guest today, Jay Fidell, reminiscing about the beginning of the baby boomer era. This is not going to be a one-show episode. We're going to have many episodes. This is an ongoing saga. But in any case, we left off where I'm in the Bronx, going to New York University. I forgot to mention studying aerospace engineering and Russian politics and language. You can guess the rest yourself.
Why did you study those topics? I mean, could you make money studying those topics?
Perhaps there was someone who was paying the bill.
I see.
So this was the post-Sputnik era. So do I need to say more? Okay, but since I had some difficulty speaking English at the time, I hadn't learned yet to speak English, they decided to test me. That the reason I got the scholarship, they had tested me on a what they call a non-verbal IQ test. And I apparently scored at the top of the entering class. So I somehow got the scholarship, but I didn't understand what was going on because I didn't speak English. This was a real handicap, So I can commiserate with a lot of Spanish immigrants or Puerto Ricans or Mexicans who come to America. I could see they could have some difficulty unless they practiced English a little earlier on. In any case, after the first year at NYU, they said, well, we really enjoyed your stay at the engineering school, which at New York University had an engineering school at the time, the Guggenheim School of Aeronautics and Astronautics, and we really enjoyed your taking up the Russian science, political science, sociology, and language. Of course, you only learned 3 words during the past years in Russian. Since I come from a German background, it didn't exactly fit. I couldn't grasp it that easily. So he said, but you did pass a couple of courses. One was political science and the other one was sociology. So we'll give you a chance to perhaps escape into the School of Arts and Science, which also happened to be on the campus, the same campus, University College of Arts and Science. And the rest was history. I graduated from New York University, and I had been during this period, I had some breaks in my schooling, and I was in the Israel Merchant Marine, and
You've done everything,
ended up in a few countries on the way. It was very interesting. I get, you see, I digress all the time, but unfortunately the story has many twists and turns. So I just got to tell you, the way I got to Hawaii was on one of these trips. We were delivering a coal shipment from Florence, South Carolina to Wakamatsu, Japan. And on the way, we found a stowaway. We had to stop in Panama, unload the stowaway. We got to Panama. The captain got onto a sandbar in a harbor in Cristobal Colon. He got on a sandbar. We couldn't fix it. He couldn't take enough fuel to get all the way to Japan. We crossed the Pacific Ocean, and they announced that everybody would get a 10-hour reprieve in Honolulu because we had to fuel up on the way to Japan.
What year was that?
This was in '63.
Okay.
And I was a young person. I actually had gone to college when I was 15 and a half, so I still had a few years to burn. And what happened was, I don't want to go into details, it's a family show, but we were 2 weeks trying to repair the ship in Panama, and of course, you know what sailors do when they're not on a ship.
I'm not going to ask you what sailors do when they're not
Well,
on a ship.
I wanted to do whatever sailors do, but I had no money to do what sailors do, so I didn't do what sailors do and stayed on the ship with the captain and his wife and the dog, and so this is when I was in Panama. But when we got to Hawaii, there was a payoff. Because when we stopped in Hawaii, everybody wanted to get off and go to Waikiki for the night. We got in at 10 o'clock. We were leaving at 10 o'clock in the morning. So they all wanted to get off. Well, they said, first you have to go to the dining room where you will be inspected by the Coast Guard public health doctor before you can go ashore. And guess what? We get off there. Everybody says, undo what? And the doctor says, uh-oh, only Rafi, the captain, and his wife can go ashore. Well, they didn't check the dog, but so we got ashore. So anyway, so that was my introduction to Hawaii. 2 years later.
If you're not following the exact action here, you can contact Rafi.
Okay.
Boritzer at
bioinformedical.com.
Bioinformedical.
Twitter, Dr. Rafi at Bioinformedical
And he
on
will
Twitter.
explain all this.
Anyway, so here we are. I've seen Hawaii. I walked 12 hours. I went from Coco's coffee shop all the way to Diamond Head, back and forth about three times in the night. So then it was dawn, and I said, I have to go back. And so I went back. It was on Nimitz Highway, I think Pier 30 we were docked at. And I forgot all about it. Been to Japan, Philippines, Hong Kong, Korea, a few other places. Came back, and then I finished the university. And then I said, well, I want to start, I've seen all these races, Orientals and blacks, and I've been all over. Seeing different groups of people who are not Jews or Americans or Europeans or whatever. And I said, maybe what I need to do is study race relations. I specialized in sociology, but after I graduated New York University, one of my professors, Dennis Wrong, a really famous demographer from Canada, and he said, you know what, why don't you come and study demography with me at the New School for Social Research, which was one of the premier theoretical schools in the world.
That was relatively new in the 60s,
right.
Huh?
Well, it was set up in 1938. All the refugees from Germany, all the Jewish professors who were escaping the Nazis set this up in New York City.
Part of the social work movement, wasn't it?
No, it was part of the philosophy. Right, so the social research, but it was basically 5 disciplines: sociology and the political science, philosophy, economics, and there was one more.
How interesting. Where was it located?
At Fifth Avenue, 12th Street and Fifth Avenue in New York City. It was
village.
called the Graduate Faculty. And so I went there. I said, no, let me go. I said, I got to study race relations in Hawaii first. And so I applied. My grades were not fantastic. I always tell this to my students at the university. I wasn't fantastic. In fact, I was pretty non-fantastic. But the University of Hawaii was gracious enough to let me in, saying that if I had gone as a non-matriculated student, then I could build up an average for the first year, and that they would let me in as matriculated student in sociology. And guess who was my graduate assistant? A gentleman with a ponytail. His name was Neil Abercrombie, because he was in the sociology department. Oh, and then I had another friend of mine, and he is a famous attorney in Honolulu, Vernon Wu, and he and I were both sociology grad students. He went on to Harvard Law School, and I eventually, trying to stay out of the draft, went to the New School for Social Research. And
Those were the days.
so I was 2 years in Hawaii at that time, and I said, I'm coming back here. If it wasn't for the Vietnam War, I would have stayed, but I had some other important appointments at the time. Anyway, so I came back to New York. My parents asked if I could help them with the nursing home, and that gets us back on track. So we start doing it. As I said, the new laws just came into effect, and they were approached by an investor who said, listen, you have a license to build 200 beds nursing home. You have 56 beds. Are you going to use that license? Because the federal government and state said, no, we need new facilities. Yet they came in with a big warehousing approach, which later turned out to be a really big mistake, but at the time it seemed like a good idea. Bigger is better, larger, all new, you know, except it also destroyed a lot of the feeling of devotion on the part of the staff. I mean, most of the nurses, aides, a helper and everything, even my mother, who was not only the administrator, she was also chief cook and everything. It was like
A family.
It was like a family. Everybody felt devoted to the chronically ill and to the aged, and it was, 56 people. You knew everybody. I would on Christmas play Santa Claus, put on a costume and give presents out.
I can see it.
You can see it. Obviously, I had, I had to grow a little bit of a beard. It was a bit difficult at the time, but it worked out. So, and suddenly we ended up, we ended up with 400 beds with several levels of care, and then I decided I wanted to go back to Israel, and so I went back, but before that I said I need a little more experience. I worked 1 year at a place called Montefiore Hospital and Medical Center, and because I had some teaching background from Hawaii, I taught at Palolo Intermediate when I went to graduate school as a substitute teacher, and I also taught at the Waioli School for Delinquent Boys in Kaimuki, and I also taught at Pacific Prep Academy, which used to be over in Makiki, next to the Lutheran Church. So I had some teaching experience. So my mother knew the hospital director, and she said, my son is looking for some experience in the medical field because he's been helping us with the nursing home, but he doesn't really, he has a degree in sociology. So, of course, the director said, yeah, I understand, very sympathetic, like, why would anybody have a degree in sociology, because my late father used to always say, oh, my son is a social worker. That used to really make me happy when he'd say that, because my sister was a social worker. And it was like, I knew what social workers did, and I don't want to say anything. Anyway, but eventually he understood that so I went to the new school, got a master's degree, then started my PhD. Went to Israel, got it and in Montefiore Hospital, I met my future boss in Israel, and he was the administrator of a hospital called the Negev Central Hospital, which was the desert hospital in Israel. And he said, you know what, drop all this, be my assistant administrator there. So I got on a plane, got there, then I was drafted, over there, and things happened, and before you know it, I was the director of emergency medical services in Israel, and I was only like 26. Move, yeah. Things moved rather quickly, and then we hosted.
What year was this?
This was 73. And then I decided I needed more education, so I went to became a medical anthropologist at the Hadassah Medical School, and went undercover as a medical student for 4 years.
I hope you guys are taking notes, because it's very hard to actually get
and there's no timeline, because I did a lot of things.
Timeline on this without taking notes.
Well, anyway, so I went through 4 years of medical school. We wrote a book, Entering Medicine, Transitional Values, and so on. I wasn't the author. I was just one of the researchers. Very interesting. Then I got a call from America to build 17 nursing homes. And so somehow I got into the business. 7,000 beds later, I thought I kind of understood the nursing home business and long-term care. And I said, I was working as a consultant, but I didn't have business credential except experience. So what I did was get an MBA. I went to Fairleigh Dickinson University because the parking was good at night after I finished work during the day. Got my MBA. And I'll just finish off and tell you the rest. I decided after a couple of years of that I needed a more professional degree than an MBA. I went to Columbia University to get a doctorate in community health. I thought it was more appropriate to what I was doing, and on and on and on.
How was the parking at Columbia?
The parking at Columbia was pretty good because I had my motorcycle. And I remember the night before I defended my dissertation, which had to do with the quality of care in nursing homes, I actually parked between two cars, came out of the defense, and it snowed for 4 hours. My motorcycle was buried. I had to shovel it for 3 hours out between two cars, drive in the snow, and I said, I'm out of here. I'm on my way to Hawaii. And the rest, again, will continue right after our break. We were watching Boritzer Bio Briefings right here. We are reminiscing about my favorite topic, me. But be that as it may, but we'll be right back. Don't go away. You're watching Boritzer's Bio Briefs right here on ThinkTech Hawaii. Come back. Don't leave. I'm watching you.
I'm Hong Jiang. I'm hosting Tuesdays Asia in Review at ThinkTech Hawaii between 4 to 5 p.m. In my shows, we bring to you important issues and events in Asia, issues related to the culture, society, the environment, and history. We want you to be more connected to events happening in Asia and in the world. So see you there.
Aloha, I'm Maria Kashem of ThinkTech Hawaii, and I want to tell you about our ThinkTech talk shows. If you didn't know it, ThinkTech streams video and audio for all of its shows live on the internet from 2 to 5 p.m. every weekday afternoon, and we replay them all night long on ustream.tv. Visit thinktechhawaii.com for our live stream and YouTube links. Raise your awareness on ThinkTech. I'm Maria Kashem, and I'll see you there.
You're watching Dr. Rafi right here on ThinkTech Hawaii, and you're at Boritzer Bio Briefings, as if you couldn't tell, right? Well, in any case, we're taking a little detours on the way about talking about the baby boomers, where their future has arrived. So let's get back a little into that. Ended up building 7,900 beds in the New York City area, long-term care beds. Had an adventurous time. Came 1986. When I got my doctorate, I decided it was time to leave. And I had, in the meantime, also owned a broadcasting company called United States Broadcasting. It's a very pompous name because I was able to register the company in North Carolina because my station was in North Carolina and the other one was in Boston. And it sounded, every time I needed a press pass, I had a press pass for all the major cities. So I said, United States Post, oh, sir, please, can we buy you dinner? No. I said, no, I'm very humble. I don't eat dinner. I said, but of course, no, actually, I imagined a lot of this because no one ever offered me dinner. But I was commuting on my motorcycle between New York, North Carolina, and Boston, which was an adventurous motorcycle. I did make some good friends, not in the medical field, but with the North Carolina Highway Patrol, and many of them remember me. We made some good friends. They asked me to stay a few times with them and not to leave because they wanted to celebrate Friday night, Saturday night, whatever. But, you know, so that was my adventure in North Carolina. I thought it was time to go to Hawaii. We had tried various formats on the radio station to survive: healthcare, black religion, black pop, white religion, non-denominational religious music, Amy Grant. We tried all kinds of programs. We originally started as country and western, something which I knew a lot about because I used to wear cowboy boots on my motorcycle. So I had a really good background in country and western. So, okay.
If you want to learn about country and western, just get a motorcycle, wear cowboy boots, it'll come to you.
I tell you something, it's nothing like these clubs in these small towns in the South, like South Carolina, North Carolina, and Georgia, where they do the Cotton Eye Joe and the Texas Two-Steps. It takes a lot of practice. I want to tell you, someone who can really do that well, I give them a lot of credit,
Yes,
because
it's
I
true.
didn't have a lot of patience for this. And so I decided to come back to Hawaii. And when I got back to Hawaii, ended up teaching. This is uninteresting at the end because we're now back right here, where I've been teaching healthcare administration for a number of years at the University of Hawaii. And now I have a company that does primarily biotechnology work and public health research in obesity and diabetes. And I've managed to combine those two areas together. That is a perfect segue into some of the issues in elder care in Hawaii and why the baby boomers present such a challenge, such a market for American business and for the American economy. I truly believe, and now mark my words, you heard it first here, emphasized by J. Fidell, who just to emphasize the fact that medical economy is the future, especially in Hawaii.
What's medical economy?
Medical economy is the result of a medical entrepreneurship structure where you give services that are medical or healthcare based, where you give medical services, where you take care of people with medical needs. Hawaii
We
is
should have more businesses around
that are
medicine.
medicine and
Don't we
healthcare.
have? We spend enough. We spend so many billions you can't even
But
count
the
it
question
already.
is, we have to make money, not spend it. We have to make money, not spend it. I'm a strong proponent of developing a competitive industrial base for medical entrepreneurship that they downgrade the tourism, downgrade the military in terms of businesses, in terms of our primary businesses. Why do I say that? Because we know how fickle those two industries can be. We know what can happen to the industry, and I think we also are now aware the effects of global warming may actually change the tourism industry as we know it. And also the lack of having water-based activities such as boating and there's many other water-based activities in Hawaii. It gives it other venues to express itself, that type of tourism. So while tourism is an essential part of this economy, and the military I know is the linchpin of our economy, I think that to be dependent upon it long term as the only industries is a big mistake. I think we have to develop an entrepreneurial base. I'll just give you an idea. Some of the things like
Didn't we try this already?
Where did we
forget
try
which.
this?
Well, we wanted to bring tourists in for health tourism. What I mean is they would come here for health services and they would also be a tourist.
Yeah.
And, like other places do this too, and become an institute.
Right, you're talking about medical tourism. I'm talking about tourism that has a medical component. I'm not talking about doing plastic surgery. I'm talking about taking care of some real issues, developing models that work. One of the things that we have never focused on is Hawaii's role in the Pacific. Hawaii has let that role, the leadership role, whether it is in industry, whether it is in education, whether it's in healthcare, whether it's in security, has given that to the universities in California, Oregon, and Washington State. For some reason, we decided that's not important for us to have that leadership
It's
role.
really too bad. You know, it's interesting. I went to see diagnostic laboratories one time, with testing and all this, and I found that they do testing for the whole Pacific. That there's, specimens are flown into them, and they test and they send reports back. So that in terms of diagnostic laboratory work, we are kind of a hub. But as you say, in terms of medicine, we are not kind of a hub.
We're on the cusp
abandoned
now.
that possibility. Yeah.
We're on the edge of advances in medicine that make it possible for us to serve as a focus. We can do surgery from Queen's Hospital in Fiji. And I've been to the hospital and
with
medical
these
school.
machines.
But those only a small part. I mean, do you know that there are people living in Hawaii who are top radiologists on the mainland and never leave Hawaii? They do all their readings on the
That's
computers.
the beauty of radiology.
But it's going to be like this everywhere. It's going to be all over medicine.
And if we don't do it, we lose it.
Not only that, one of the biggest things, we have all these war vets that are coming back without limbs. We see requests for donations, for support. Every holiday, whether it's Memorial Day, Independence Day, or some other, support the troops. But what better way than support the troops? First of all, as becoming the place to make them feel at home. I mean, everybody dreams about Hawaii as the spectacular. Why not have the top rehab facility here? I know that NYU rehab, medical rehab.
What about retirement homes? You're an expert in retirement
That's
homes.
our well.
Why don't we have more retirement homes?
Why is I'll give you I know that I'm probably going to have
I'm gonna press on that
I'm going to be
question.
marked
I'm
for a
pressing.
contract
Yeah.
that someone's going to put a hit on me. I know, but if you look at Makaha, for instance, there's that big hotel that failed years ago. Why isn't that becoming a school for rehabilitative medicine professions? Why isn't that becoming a rehab center? Why isn't that becoming a center for experimental geriatrics? Why not?
What's there now?
They're going to build another hotel for the golf course, condominium apartments.
Okay.
So this is what we needed. This is going to expand so we can have more maids and cleaning personnel. I want to see our young people trained to be in professions that we're just now dreaming about, or we are planning now. Why not?
Okay, I think you've identified the need,
Yeah.
and you've identified the status of the matter, which is we're not meeting the need.
Right.
So what do we do now?
I'll tell you, as soon as we come back, you're watching Boritzer's bio briefing. We're going to be right back, and you stay there. I'm watching you.
Aloha, I'm Jay Fidell. This is ThinkTech Hawaii, broadcasting live from the Pioneer Plaza in downtown Honolulu. We raise public awareness about tech, energy, and globalism in Hawaii. Technology is critical to our state. A vibrant tech sector will give us new prospects in the global marketplace and will offer great careers and make our economy more resilient. Streaming live on Ustream and Spreaker, ThinkTech allows its hosts and guests invaluable opportunities to report important events and discuss important questions, and to be heard here in Hawaii and around the world. You can find links to our live streams on thinktechhawaii.com or on our mobile website, m.thinktechhawaii.com. And you can see our archive on YouTube. It's all just a click away. We want to do whatever we can to keep Hawaii relevant, connected, and thriving in the complexity of the 21st century. We hope you will help us in those efforts. Tune in today. This is ThinkTech. I'm Jay Fidell.
Joe, I saw you get up and going to the fridge for a beer. I told you, do not leave. We are watching you. We have to wait. This is Cyberscope. You don't know what Cyberscope is? I was hoping you would, because I have no clue what I'm talking about. So, in any case, you're watching Boritzer by Briefing. Our talk today is about my personal journey to geriatrics, how I got so old so quickly. And if you feel the same way, let me tell you, here's the good news. We've been talking about possibilities of invigorating Hawaii's moribund economy. And I don't mean that we don't have enough to eat. I don't mean that we're in danger of poverty on the street, in danger of being swamped by 7,000 homeless. No, nothing like this is going to happen. Oh, you said it has happened? Oh, why didn't anybody tell me? So, I'll give you an example. One of the things that I see. In the few years that I lived in the Middle East, quite a number of years, every time there was a disaster, several countries had emergency hospitals, emergency programs that they could put into effect within 24 to 72 hours, especially in the case of the earthquake in Turkey and so on. Emergency hospital that came all ready to go in containers, like the Matson containers. Okay? I think the Matson containers are the most amazing thing, especially when they wear down a little. They're no longer useful as containers. I think they can make terrific homes. I think they can make terrific projects for people to practice on their imagination and contribution to society. I think we can teach people how to do computerized welding. I mean, I think we can do so many things to provide so many services with so many strands and ancillary things. But we've got to believe not only in the mission, we got to believe in ourselves. And we got to stop drinking at the milkshake bar. You've got to go and pick up the stick and dig the ground. And the same is when I'm talking about medical entrepreneurship, I'm also talking about the baby boomers. And that's why this is not a one-trick pony that we are showing today. Just talking today about the elderly and the opportunities, the market, it's only the beginning. Give you an example. 8 years ago, there was a brand new site on the web. And it really just epitomized the coming of the baby boomers. Can you think of what site changed things for a lot of people? WebMD. This is
I remember that, and you're right. That's
This
true.
is the first generation. When I talk about the baby boomers, I want you to know that this is the first generation in history where people have been aware that they have control over their longevity in life.
Is this still working, WebMD?
Yes? Yes?
Because HMSA tried that here. I'm not sure it's still working.
No, but
Where
WebMD
you
has
can
become...
contact your doctor, you can ask
No,
him
but
any
just
question.
news and everything. WebMD is still a very solid site. I think it's owned by one of the top 20 corporations in America. But it's where you get information, where many, many people get information. And this was the icon of the baby boomers. This is where they practice to see, how well am I doing? What's my chance of living longer? Okay? So there's several things that came into it. When I say they took control of their life, first of all, with the computers, they were able, for the first time, they were able to monitor themselves. I don't say play doctor on yourself, but monitor, take responsibility for their own life.
Yeah,
Do you remember your grandmother?
yeah.
Did she have all kinds of nostrums when you were young, saying, oh, if you have a cold, you better stay out of the draft?
Oh,
Or
tons.
tons and tons, right? And did many of them work? Keep you like from
Well,
getting your back flow?
psychologically they work, but really I'm not sure they
Well,
work.
whatever. But we don't have those relationships. So we need an outside area. We need an outside source of responsibility and accountability, and a source that we trust.
Well, also, we want to be in touch with the latest technology.
That's right.
Which my grandmother didn't know anything about.
Right, but
I'm a lot more comfortable if I'm talking to somebody who presumably knows the latest technology.
yeah, but there were a lot of technologies that doctors gave you that no one knew what they were talking about, and they gave it to you.
Well, that's part of the baby boom experience.
That's what makes the legal profession possible. I mean,
A lot of lawyers got along on that, yeah.
so anyway, so being responsible for what you eat, being responsible for checking what disease you might, being able to look up even the dictionary of the diagnostic dictionaries, of what they call it, the DSM. Is it the DSM?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. It'll come
DRS. No, diagnostic related. No, I forgot. Okay.
back. It's a little book.
It's a little book with the diagnostic codes and so on.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And
But the thing about it is that we can go online, we can find anything and everything, we can learn about ourselves, learn about the technology. We can be healthier just having that access. That's pretty interesting, and anybody can do that. So why doesn't Hawaii do it? Because it doesn't matter where you are. You can be anywhere in the world and make a buck doing that. Hawaii hasn't done that. No institution here. I mentioned the HMSA site. I'm not sure if it's still running, but that was like for local,
Right.
use. What about for global use? What about becoming a mecca of medical information?
I'll give you even a better one.
What about Boritzer's mecca of medical information?
Well, I'm looking at something else, okay? We have a lot of hoopla about the Native Hawaiian healthcare, okay? The late Senator Inouye got a lot of funds, directly or indirectly, funded into there. Now, this is not a one-trick pony. When you talk about Native or indigenous population health, it is an issue. It's not an issue just for Hawaii. It's even a bigger issue if you look at Hawaii, at the Indians, if you look at the Eskimos. They're in worse shape. They didn't have a Senator Inouye looking after their needs and setting up institutions. Look at Australia, New Zealand, you look at Fiji, all these areas with indigenous population with the same type of issues. Okay? Now, Why aren't we taking the lead? Why aren't we saying, hey,
We have this incredible diversity. It's worth money to have diversity that you can draw these conclusions,
we have
do research.
experimental things like Mao farms over in the Waianae Coast, doing sustainable ecology, doing sustainable farming and agriculture. Why do we only have it on the Waianae Coast? Why aren't we taking the leadership role? This is my question. The same thing about healthcare. Same thing about the baby boomers. Right? When I was on Maui, I talked about my wide body canoes as an attack on obesity and diabetes control. Why isn't this followed? Why isn't someone doing the same thing? I don't know. I've been trying to push it. I've tried to popularize the idea, because you've got to change the culture of thinking about things, okay?
So the culture of thinking in Hawaii doesn't really support these
Okay.
ideas.
Yes, I think that you've got to get agreement, first of all, that change is due. First of all, it's a misunderstanding of history and culture and anthropology to think that any groups, any cultural group, any ethnic group, any native group stays the same way through time. Never happened, never happened. Okay, there's a constant evolution, whether it's social, political, technological, economic, or cultural. And I think that this is the first thing to make people understand, not just to be, an inert person going through the process, be a part of the process. We're going to continue with our discussion on the baby boomers because we are full of stuff. I've got stuff, and I didn't get my stuff off. So give me an opportunity next time. You've been watching Boritzer's Bio Briefings right here on ThinkTech Hawaii Television. We're going to be with you next week. Stay tuned. Don't go away. And remember one thing. We're watching you.